dust, and silence. That's all Willow Creek had known for years, a town shrinking under the sun, with a church bell that had forgotten how to ring and a saloon that poured more regret than whiskey. I'm Sheriff Eli Turner. Every night I watch the sun get swallowed by the horizon, and every night I remember. I remember the day, 10 years ago, I watched the woman I loved, Clara, marry my best friend, Thomas Hale. Thomas was a dreamer. He chased gold and promises west of the mountains and never came back. Now, Clara lives on the edge of town, raising a boy with his father's smile. And me. I'm still carrying the weight of the words I never said. It was late afternoon when the stagecoach rattled in, its wheels a noisy complaint against the dry earth. Marvin, our round little postmaster, was sorting his bundle when he yelled, "Mail for Mrs. Clara Hale." My head snapped up. Clara hadn't gotten a letter in years. Marvin, being the town's unofficial news service, brought it to me first. It's just what you do in a place this small. "Came from the west," he mumbled, squinting at the stamp. "Looks like it took a long, hard road to get here. Says Deadwood, Dakota Territory." I took the envelope. It felt fragile, ancient. The edges were yellowed, the corners soft, the ink smudged by time itself. But the handwriting, that was unmistakable. It was Thomas Hale's. My breath caught in my throat. That evening, I rode out to Clara's homestead. A single light glowed in her window, a warm, soft beacon against the deepening dusk. Her boy, Sam, was stacking firewood, and he ran up to me with that familiar grin. "Evenin', Sheriff. Ma's bacon pie. You stayin' for supper?" I managed a faint smile. "Maybe just a word with your ma, son." Inside, Clara stood by the stove, sleeves rolled up, her hair tied back. Time had been kind but not easy on her. Her eyes still held their warmth, but they carried a decade of sorrow. "Evening, Eli," she said, her voice soft as a whisper. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I held the letter out. Words felt heavy, useless. "It's from him, Clara. From Thomas." Her hands trembled as she took it. She just stared at the handwriting for what felt like an eternity before she whispered, "But Thomas has been gone 10 years. "I know," I said, my voice barely there. She sank into a chair at her small wooden table, her eyes fixed on the sealed envelope. The wax seal was cracked. The postmark was a ghost from a time when her husband was still alive, lost somewhere beyond the mountains. I turned away, giving her a moment, my hand resting on the doorframe. The only sounds were the ticking of the clock and the wind sighing through the open window. Then I heard it, the soft tear of the envelope. The room fell silent again, and then a sound I'll never forget. A quiet, broken gasp. A sob that tore through 10 years of silence. She pressed the letter to her chest, tears finally breaking free, spilling down her face. Oh, God. Eli, he never made it home. I moved closer. "What does it say?" I asked, my voice gentle. She shook her head, struggling to find her breath. When she finally spoke, her voice was as thin as dust. "He wrote it the night before he died. He said he'd struck gold, enough to change our lives. He was coming home." My throat tightened. "Where was he?" "He was headed through the Black Ridge Pass," she said, her voice cracking. "He said if I ever got this letter, and he didn't come home, to find the saddlebag under the old oak by Miller's Creek. He hid something there. For us." The lamplight flickered between us, making the shadows dance like ghosts on the walls. I looked at Clara, at the storm of grief and hope in her eyes. Then she whispered, "Thomas trusted you. He wrote your name in the letter, too. Said, if I couldn't find the courage to go, you would." I turned to the window, staring out into the night that had swallowed the world. 10 years of silence. 10 years of unanswered prayers. All broken by a letter that had crossed a decade to find its way home. I looked back at her, the woman I'd let go, the promise I now had to keep. "I'll ride at first light. The next morning, as the plains were painted gold and red by the rising sun, I saddled my horse. Clara and Sam stood by the fence, watching me, their silence heavier than any words. "Be careful," she said. "The Black Ridge doesn't take kindly to strangers." I tipped my hat, the gesture feeling more for my own courage than for hers. "I'm no stranger to ghosts, Clara." I rode out, the dust rising behind me, the letter folded safely in my coat pocket. The sun climbed higher, the vast landscape feeling both familiar and like a new, dangerous world. As I reached the narrow path leading toward Miller's Creek, something glinted in the mud near the ridge. I pulled my horse to a halt, my eyes narrowing. Boot prints. Fresh ones. Too fresh for a man 10 years gone. A cold realization washed over me. Someone else was looking for Thomas Hale's gold. And maybe, just maybe, someone else knew exactly why he never made it home. This wasn't just about a lost fortune anymore. It was about a 10-year-old secret, and I was riding right into the middle of it. The morning light had barely touched the canyon when I reached the mouth of Black Ridge Pass. The cliffs rose high on either side, red and jagged like open wounds in the earth. The air smelled of iron and the coming rain. I reined in my horse, Tracker, his breath pluming in the cool air, and scanned the ground. The tracks I'd seen earlier weren't from just one rider. There were 2 sets, one heavier, one lighter, both fresh. I muttered to myself, "Looks like I'm not the only one chasing ghosts." Further down, the trail narrowed into a tight ravine where the old oak tree stood, its branches gnarled and stubborn against the stone. It was a landmark Thomas Hale had mentioned in his first letter, the one that started this whole mess. Beneath its ancient roots, I saw a patch of disturbed earth. Something was wrong. I swung down from Tracker, my boots crunching on the gravel, and knelt, brushing the dirt aside with my bare hands. My fingers hit something solid, an old leather saddlebag, torn and weathered, but still buckled shut. With a bit of effort, the buckle gave way. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a small, heavy lockbox, and tucked beside it, a second letter. My heart hammered against my ribs. I unfolded the paper carefully. The handwriting was shaky, but it was his. It matched the first. "Eli," it read, "if you're reading this, I reckon the world turned without me. I was followed when I found the gold. If they catch me, promise me you'll take care of Clara and the boy. Tell him I did right by him in the end." The words blurred for a second. The letter continued. "The gold ain't worth dying for, but maybe it can buy him a new start." My eyes softened, then narrowed. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. A twig snapped behind me. I turned sharply, my hand already on the grip of my revolver. Out from behind a massive boulder stepped a man holding a rifle. He wore a long coat, his boots were caked in dust, and a nasty scar cut across his cheek. "Well, I'll be damned," the stranger said, his voice a low growl. "Sheriff Eli Turner, 10 years, and you still look like trouble." My jaw clenched. I didn't recognize him, not right away. "Do I know you, mister?" The man smirked, a cruel, knowing look in his eyes. "You ought to. Name's Wyatt Briggs. Used to ride with Thomas Hale, before your fine friend left us to die in them mountains." The name hit me like a physical blow. Briggs. I'd heard Thomas mention him, but only in whispers, memories he wanted to bury. I kept my voice calm, level. "You rode with Thomas?" Wyatt spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dirt. "Rode, fought, bled. He stole the gold from my gang. Said he was taking it back to his wife and kid. Then he ran." He took a step closer, his eyes burning with a decade of old rage. "And now you're here to finish what he started, ain't you? Find the prize for his widow." I shook my head slowly, my hand never straying from my gun. "I came for the truth, Wyatt, not the gold." Wyatt cocked his rifle, the sound echoing off the canyon walls. "Truth's worth less than lead out here." But before he could pull the trigger, a voice echoed down the canyon, high and young, cutting through the tension. "Sheriff Turner." My heart sank. Sam, Thomas's boy. He was at the edge of the trail, riding a small pinto, his face pale from the climb and the fear. "Sam, get back!" I shouted, my voice cracking with urgency. The distraction was all I needed. I dove sideways, drawing my revolver as I hit the ground. A shot rang out, splintering a chunk of bark from the old oak tree, right where my head had been. The horses screamed and bolted up the trail. I landed on my side, raised my pistol, and fired back. The shot was true, hitting the rifle clean out of Wyatt's hands. The weapon clattered against the rocks. The outlaw fell back, clutching his shoulder with a curse. "You're making a big mistake, Sheriff," he snarled from the ground. "That gold don't belong to you or her." I stood over him, my breath steady, the smell of gunpowder sharp in the air. "It belongs to the man who died trying to do right by his family." I turned toward Sam, who was staring, wide-eyed. "You shouldn't have followed me." "I had to, Sheriff," the boy said, his voice shaking. "Ma said she had a bad feelin'. She's scared." I looked toward the horizon. Dark clouds were building over the ridge, mirroring the storm brewing in my gut. "She's right to be." We tied Wyatt's hands and started the long ride back toward town, the first rumbles of thunder rolling over the plains. But halfway down the trail, I noticed something strange in the distance. A thin plume of smoke rising from the direction of Willow Creek. It was too dark, too thick to be from a chimney. I froze, pulling Tracker to a halt. "That's the town." Wyatt, slumped in his saddle, just grinned, his teeth bloody from where he'd hit the ground. "Told you, Sheriff. We ain't the only ones after it. My men been waitin' for that letter to show up. Looks like the lady's got visitors." A fire of pure fury rose in my chest. I shoved him forward. "Move." We rode hard through the storm, the rain coming down in cold, slashing sheets. Lightning lit the horizon, and in one brilliant flash as we crested the final hill, I saw it. Smoke, dark and ugly, was curling from the roof of Clara Hale's cabin. The front door was splintered, hanging off its hinges. 2 unfamiliar horses were tied outside. My gut turned to stone. I dismounted before Tracker even stopped, dragging Wyatt along with me. "Stay here," I ordered Sam, my voice raw. "No matter what you hear. You understand?" The boy's voice trembled, but his eyes were defiant. "Sheriff, if they hurt my ma—" I looked back at him, my face hard but my eyes full of a promise I had to keep. "They won't. Not while I'm still breathin'." I stepped out into the rain, my revolver drawn, my boots sinking into the thick mud. Every instinct screamed at me. From inside the cabin I heard a single muffled cry, Clara's voice. Then a chilling silence. "Thanks for watching." The rain hammered the tin roof like a drum roll for the dead. I kicked open the door to Clara Hale's cabin, and the scene hit me like a gut punch. Red firelight, gunpowder smoke, and 2 men cut from the same cruel cloth as the rest of the frontier. One had Clara by the arm, his grip bruising. The other was tearing her home apart, tossing plates and keepsakes like trash. "Where's the gold, lady?" he snarled. "Your dead husband owed us more than dust." Clara's face was a mask of tears and rain, her voice a ghost in the storm. "There is no gold. He never made it back." The brute raised his hand to strike her. That's when the thunder wasn't from the sky. My gunshot echoed through the cabin, and the man fell where he stood. I stepped out of the shadows of the doorway, my revolver still smoking, my eyes burning with a cold fire I hadn't felt in years. "Let her go," I said. My voice was low, colder than a winter grave. The second man was faster, but not fast enough. He spun around, dragging Clara toward the window, jamming his pistol against her temple. "You take 1 step closer, Sheriff, and she dies." My finger tightened on the trigger. The world narrowed to the space between my front sight and his desperate eyes. "You hurt her," I promised, "and I swear by the law of this land you won't see sunrise." For a split second, he hesitated. That's all Clara needed. She twisted, wrenching herself free. I fired. The shot cracked like lightning, and he dropped. Silence crashed down, heavier than the storm itself. Outside, the relentless rain finally softened, as if surrendering. I rushed to Clara, my hands finding hers to steady her. "You all right?" I asked, my voice rough. She nodded, her whole body trembling. "I am now." Just then, her boy, Sam, came running through the mud, his small voice cutting through the quiet. "Mama!" She pulled him into an embrace so tight it looked like she was trying to shield him from the entire world. I turned back to the storm. Wyatt Briggs, the architect of this whole nightmare, was still tied to his horse outside, soaked and seething with fury. I walked out to meet him, the thunder rumbling at my back. He glared up at me from the mud. "So, this is justice, huh? You kill my men, take the gold, and call yourself righteous?" I wiped the rain from my face, my gaze locked on his. "You and your men took everything from a good man. Thomas Hale died trying to keep that gold out of your hands." Wyatt spat on the ground. "And what do you know about good men, Sheriff? Heard you loved his wife before he did." His words hit me like a physical blow. A shadow of a long-buried pain flickered across my face. He saw it and sneered, twisting the knife. "Maybe you were just waiting for him to die. Maybe you wanted this all along." My fist clenched, my knuckles white, but I held my voice steady. "You don't get to twist a dead man's truth." I pulled the worn letter from my coat, the one Thomas wrote before he died, the one that had taken 10 years to find its way to me. I tossed it onto the ground in front of him. "Read it, then tell me again what kind of man Thomas Hale was." Later that night, as the storm finally broke and the moon cast a pale light over the land, I buried the 2 dead men on the ridge. There was no gold in the lockbox they'd been after, just a simple locket wrapped in cloth and a note in Thomas's handwriting. "For Clara and the boy. My gold is their future, not my curse. If you're the one reading this, Eli, thank you. You were always the better man." I closed my eyes, the high country wind whispering through the pines like a long overdue absolution. When morning came, the town of Willow Creek woke to a sky painted silver and blue. The smoke had cleared. For the first time in years, the church bell rang not for sorrow but for peace. I saw Clara and Sam standing on their porch dressed in clean clothes, the morning light warm on their faces. I approached quietly, hat in my hand. "You didn't find the gold, did you?" she asked softly, her voice no longer trembling. I shook my head. "No, ma'am. Just this." I opened my palm. The locket glimmered in the new day's sun. Inside was a small, faded drawing. Thomas, Clara, and a baby Sam, all smiling. Her eyes filled with fresh tears, but these were different. "That's all he ever wanted us to have." A faint smile touched my lips. Then he got his wish. Weeks passed. Life, slow but sure, seeped back into Willow Creek. The saloon got a new coat of paint. Kids started running down the street again, their laughter chasing away the ghosts of silence. One afternoon, as I sat on the bench outside my office, watching the world come back to itself, Clara walked up with 2 mugs of coffee. "I figured you could use some company," she said, her smile as warm as the coffee she handed me. "Always," I replied. We sat there in the comfortable quiet, watching the sunset spill gold over the hills, the only kind of gold that mattered, the kind no one could ever steal. After a while, her voice was barely a whisper on the breeze. "You ever wonder why that letter took 10 years to get here?" I nodded slowly, my eyes on the horizon. "Maybe it came when it was supposed to." She looked at me then, her eyes soft with a deep, unspoken understanding. "And maybe so did you." As the last light bled from the sky, I tipped my hat and whispered a final prayer for the man who'd once been my brother. "Rest easy, Thomas. You brought your family home. Just took a while to find the road. The wind carried my words out over the plains, across the fresh graves on the ridge, and toward the mountains where the sun had finally fallen. And that night, for the first time in a long time, the town of Willow Creek and its sheriff slept easy. The ghosts were finally at peace. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of the Old West. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice, redemption, and the enduring human spirit. We'll see you on the next one.